In computing, a uniform resource name is the historical name for a uniform resource identifier that uses the URN scheme. A URI is a string of characters used to identify a name of a web resource. Such identification enables interaction with representations of the web resource over a network, typically the World Wide Web, using specific protocols. Defined in 1997 in RFC 2141, URNs were intended to serve as persistent, location-independent identifiers, allowing the simple mapping of namespaces into a single URN namespace. The existence of such a URI does not imply availability of the identified resource, but such URIs are required to remain globally unique and persistent even when the resource ceases to exist or becomes unavailable. Since RFC 3986 in 2005, the use of the term has been deprecated in favor of the less restrictive URI, a view proposed by a joint working group between the World Wide Web Consortium and Internet Engineering Task Force. Both URNs and Uniform Resource Locators are URIs, and a particular URI may be a name as well as a locator at the same time. URNs were originally intended in the 1990s to be part of a three-part information architecture for the Internet, along with URLs and uniform resource characteristics, a metadata framework. However, URCs never progressed past the conceptual stage, and other technologies such as the resource description framework later took the place. Syntax. The syntax of a URN is represented in Bacchus in a UR form as and LT, URN and GT equals URN and LT, NID and GT, and LT, NSS and GT. This renders as URN and LT, NID and GT, and LT, NSS and GT. The leading URN sequence is case insensitive, and LT, NID and GT is the namespace identifier, which determines the syntactic interpretation of an LT, NSS and GT, the namespace-specific string. The functional requirements for uniform resource names are described in RFC 1737. Namespaces. In order to ensure the global uniqueness of URN namespaces, their identifiers are required to be registered with the IANA. Registered namespaces may be formal or informal. An exception to the registration requirement is made for experimental namespaces. Formal namespaces are those where some Internet users are expected to benefit from the publication and are subject to several restrictions. They must not be an already registered NID, not start with X, not start with URN, not start with XY, where XY is any combination of two ASCII letters. Be more than 2 letters long. Informal namespaces are registered with the IANA and assigned a number sequence as an identifier, in the format URN and LT, number and GT. Informal namespaces are fully fledged URN namespaces and can be registered in global registration services. Experimental namespaces take the form X and LT, NID and GT. Namespaces of this form are intended only for use within internal or limited experimental contexts, and are not required or expected to be globally unique. RFC 6648 deprecates the use of X notation for new ID names, but makes no recommendation on substituting existing X names, and does not override existing specifications that require the use of X. Examples. Used as unique identifier. URNs are used as unique identifiers, for example, to identify a book by its ISBN. So, the URN is also nominated as public ID. In that kind of public utilization, a central authority is both the assign author ID and the technical authority of the URN resolver. Resolvers. A URN resolver is responsible for initiating and sequencing the queries that ultimately ultimately lead to a full resolution of a URN name or a resolution request, e.g., a request for translation of a URN name into a URL. Transparent identifiers. Identifiers such as ISBNs that rely upon a central authority may be opaque identifiers. Users of opaque identifiers must query the authority about the correct identifier for an object from its metadata, such as year or title. By contrast, URNs can be used as transparent identifiers when the syntax specifies the construction simple rules or inferences from basic metadata. An example is the lex schema. A Brazilian lex URN is used for both legislative and case law, and is built by syntax rules for formatting the local name, publication date, and local identifier. Absence of DOI namespace. The maintainers of the digital object identifier system have deliberately not registered a DOI namespace for URNs, stating that URN architecture assumes a DNS-based resolution discovery service to find the service appropriate to the given URN scheme. However, no such widely deployed RD schemes currently exist. DOI is not registered as a URN namespace despite fulfilling all the functional requirements. Since URN registration appears to offer no advantage to the DOI system, it requires an additional layer of administration for defining DOI as a URN namespace and an additional step of unnecessarily redirection to access the resolution service, already achieved through either HTTP proxy or native resolution. If RD's mechanisms supporting URN specifications become widely available, DOI will be registered as a URN. Citations